So, Apple took a tumble in its stocks today because they missed their revenue forecasts, and it's mainly attributed to them saying that people don't upgrade their phones every year with the high prices and costs of the iPhone along with incremental upgrades. So I thought that'd be a great segue into why I'm returning the iPad Pro, but not for necessarily reasons you might think. I'm returning the iPad Pro, but keeping last generation's 12.9 iPad Pro. Along with that, I'm keeping my iPhone XS Max because I think iOS does a tremendous job in this mobile world, and one of the main complaints from reviewers from this newest iPad Pro, even with all its upgrades in engineering and its design, is that it's still an iPad. And because Apple has done such a great job with iOS and the A12 Bionic chip that's also in the XS Max, you get all the mobile power and computing in the palm of your hand with the XS Max. So at least on one front, I wanted for a while to make a review of the iPad Pro, but I've struggled because quite frankly, I didn't use it as much as I thought I would, as much as I wanted to. And it concerned me because why was I never using this as much as I thought? Because I was always pulling out my iPhone XS Max. And Apple's done such a good world in this post-PC era that Steve Jobs claims, and with the original iPhone 3GS. And so if you compare the strides that they made in the iOS environment from, you can use this in any direction, the iPhone 3GS versus the iPad Pro, right? All the way from 2010 to nearly 10 years later, their most advanced iOS device on the market, they've made tremendous strides. I literally tried to make a review of trying to go back to complaints to iOS, the original on the 3GS with the App Store, to say that Apple isn't necessarily doing incremental upgrades. They've done so much to grow the ecosystem, so you can't claim they're not doing innovation. And honestly, I could not last 15 minutes on this device. Mainly it's attributed to maybe the speed of the device. Maybe, Sean, you should just be patient more and wait. It is a good calling and text device and it feels great in your hands, but looking at the App Store, none of the support is there for the apps. While on here and all your future devices it is, and I just could not last on this. But this is a great representation of where Apple has really pushed its computing boundaries, right? From the 3GS App Store all the way to challenging and, quote, being 97% faster than all the PCs on the market. But one of the great complaints was that this still does not replace your PC. And so, alright, it doesn't, but it has a great ecosystem of apps. But even so, with the XS Max, that's the reason why the iPad mini line got killed, was because as mobile phones got bigger, people started using those iPad mini tablets less. And so I guarantee you everyone who's watching this has a cell phone plan and is connected with their phone. And only a subset has this LTE version always connected, plus paying the additional data plan on their line. So I found myself every time I'm on the go and in commute, even if I had to have productivity needs, I'd use Office 365 or Google Sheets. If I need to snap a photo and upload it, I'd always trust that my iPhone XS was connected versus the iPad, which always had hit or miss internet connection, even at a cafe. It was hard for me to always pull this out and trust it to know that it would sync with all my notes and all my photos that I took, because I knew that my phone, the iPhone XS Max, had the power and the connectivity to always be there. So on the mobile front, Apple's done too good of a job with focusing on the iPhone. Now on the productivity and PC side, using this as a powerhouse device, you guys know that I love my Surface Book 2 here. And even on that laptop computing front, if you have a 9-to-5 job, or in the corporate world, or say you're even running your own self-employed, guaranteed you have a PC because you do need the full power of the apps. And even for me, using the creative Adobe suite, you have this, the limited ports here, all this universal compatibility. You can store your media onto external hard drives. You can run full Adobe suite versus all the Adobe mobile friendly apps that the iPad has. And they're getting there with some support from your major players in, say, the professional world, but it's already here with the Surface Book. And so if I'm actually sat down in front of monitors and I want to have powerhouse productivity, my custom keyboards and mice, then yes, there is still room, and it's still almost a dominant space in the productivity world for the laptop. And this has been a universal debate of where the iPad, stands, even in 2019. And so, for me, the iPad still stands in this nice area, and there's still very much use cases. Let me defend, those who really support this and say, what is a computer, and this is the future of it. Yes, there is an in-between. And I feel like it's when you wake up in the morning and you need to catch up on your daily headlines, then yes, you pull out your iPad Pro. Everywhere a newspaper or a magazine used to live back in the 80s and 90s, this is the perfect replacement, right? You can dive into the world of the World Wide Web and all the apps, catch up on all the headlines in the morning. But when you're commuting, you'll switch to mobile, right? And at work, you're going to switch to desktop. But again, when you come home and you decompress, this is the in-between again. You love to plop on your couch, relax, watch some YouTube or Netflix videos. This, for me, the iPad still lives in this media consumption device world. But Sean, that's not true. There's a lot of power in this. It's 97% faster, right? It's more compact. It's a lightweight OS. It is, and it has worked beautifully. I run a small business here, and I still use the iPad Mini 2 to take a lot of orders. And I use the iPad Air that came out for the Square registers, right? You'll see this post-PC era and all these mom and pop shops and all these restaurants who use Square as their, main driver or main register. And the iPad exists there, that in-between where you don't need that full productivity power, but you do need something that is fast and reliable and smooth. And so the iPad for me exists in the media consumption space, the eras in the comfort of your home, and also for those, almost Raspberry Pi-esque use cases like for Square registers or in your local businesses, and for those who need lightweight computing versus those in the finance industry or really, students, juggernauts in schools who need productivity and power. So, even there, why don't you keep the iPad Pro? Well, that's because I'm the last holdout. Is all their design, engineering, and efforts? Yes, it has made it tremendously lighter, but if you're going to compare this as a media consumption device, and in between, Apple again outdid themselves with a 12.9 version of the iPad Pro last generation. And the main differences here, besides it being so much lighter and it looks nicer, the bezels are smaller, are the ports. There's many holdouts of the iPhone 6s Plus who said that was peak Apple for them in design because it still had a charging port and it still had a headphone port. In fact, I still have an iPhone 6s Plus. You can charge and listen to a 3.5mm jack. There's still so much value there. But all the controversies and all the courage and all removing that port has led to so much, disgust in the market. And even if you're advertising this, it always confused me as a mobile, PC replacement faster than 97% of devices. Why does the MacBook line still have a headphone jack, right? I can have my qualms with the headphone jack, but I felt it was best represented in this article as to why the headphone jack still represents so much. And so it's never meant more to me as a media consumption device for this iPad 12.9 to have the headphone jack here. And even more, the lightning port. Now, one of the cells of the newest iPad is the USB-C. And that's, you can plug into your monitors and you can plug into your DSLR cameras, for photography sessions. So in between one case, for those who have those creativity needs. But personally, I don't use it that way. And I'm not sure how many of you watching really use it that way. And so having USB-C here, it's great. USB-C, I want to take over the world. But I've had at least 4 or 5 years accumulating an army of lightning ports. And so this is only one generation away. And I guarantee you, if you're always carrying your mobile device, you're always carrying your iPhone because you want to stay in the iPad family or the Apple ecosystem, you always have a lightning cable on you. But you're less likely to have a USB-C. Give it a couple years and USB-C will be synonymous in everywhere, right? It's taken the world by storm. But for now, I still have lightning ports everywhere, and it's been so convenient to use just one cord because the battery lasts so long on both the iPad and the iPhone that I can just plug one when I'm traveling and plug it into this one after, get them both charged. And as a media consumption device, having the screen real estate here, it's the same size screen. And when you're really using it, the bezels on this big a device disappear. Kind of like what the Surface Line does. Now I do have, reservations, and I do want this bezel smaller, but is that enough for me to trade the lightning port and a headphone jack? Just for this device here that is more powerful, but for the power I'm using my iPhone XS, and having USB-C and being forced to use wireless headphones. So all that adds up to me being honest in this review as to why I'm returning this device. Let's be very clear here. I am a big fan of the Apple ecosystem. I have an iPad mini 2 that's still in use, an iPad Air for my register. I have the second generation iPad Pro 2017 12.9 inch that I will still be using every day, and every day I'll be using the iPhone XS Max, as my computing driver. It's been the most convenient thing, and if I could channel everything of my mobile world into my phone, my iPhone XS Max, then I would, and I have. And so that's why for me, I'm returning the iPad Pro 2018 because it just doesn't fit in to what my needs are. And it just is still different in terms of all its ports and USB-C charges, and they've done such a good job on the mobile front, and they've done such a good job with the previous generations. Apple's facing challenges with those who stopped upgrading at the iPhone 6s Plus. And for me, I'm going to stop upgrading my iPad for now with the second generation iPad Pro 12.9 inch. It got me super excited to have this real estate, and it has all the ports that I need, and it's a great media consumption device for when I do use it. But even so, I don't use it, every single day like I do my phone and like I do my laptop going to my 9-to-5 job. So I'm sticking to the Apple ecosystem here, and it's a great powerhouse device. But frankly, I just don't need it. And I can't wait for Apple to merge their iOS ecosystems or even make the iPhone the primary computing device. I'm excited to see what that looks like. But until then, I'm returning my iPad Pro, and I'm keeping all my other Apple system ecosystem of devices. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope this helps you decide on what Apple devices you have, or on what Apple devices, why you love them and why you're keeping them, why you're holding off for upgrades, and why you're waiting for Tim Cook and team to really, innovate on some new forefront of the mobile computing world. I think this is a beautiful device, and I think it's great for what they pitched it as. It's the biggest change since iPad. It's still an iPad, and there's still an in-between world for it. Just this device is not really needed for me. So Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.